Hello, my name is Cllr Sadygov and I'm County Councillor for Towston Road Division for Northamptonshire County Council and District Councillor for Grange Park Ward, South Northamptonshire Council. Thank you very much for watching this video first of all, and this is a follow-up on my previous address to you. Just to keep you updated again as to what's happening. As you know, it's been a very tenuous week of all the councils are sort of now voting on this submission of the letter to the Secretary of State, or rather expressing their support or no support at all for the submission. Just to catch up very quickly, on the 27th of March, the James Brokenshire rightly honoured MP, the Secretary of State has invited all the 8 principal councils in Northamptonshire to come up with the locally tailored proposal for Northamptonshire local government reform. Since then, there's numerous meetings that took place, and on the 28th of August, the County Council has held its first meeting on the vote on supporting the proposal to go forward and the letter to be submitted or not. It was then followed by other principal councils in Northamptonshire, and the remaining 3 councils actually voting today or tonight. I know the South Northampton has got a full council meeting, a special full council meeting starting at 6 o'clock, which I'm going to go to. So where are we now with it? With the proposal to be submitted by no later than Friday the 31st of August, we now have got a confirmation that the County Council has supported all 4 recommendations put across to members, and it was a recorded vote, so you'll probably be able to see it in the minutes of the meeting as to who voted how. And with the overall majority, all 4 recommendations have been carried, and the proposal has been voted in favour to be submitted to the Secretary of State by the County Council. The invitation is, in a nutshell, is to form 2 unitary councils, okay? 2 new unitary organisations, which is going to be dividing, if you see Northamptonshire on the map, on west and north unitary authorities. With north consistent of 4 current district and borough councils. We're talking Kettering, Wellingborough, Corby and East Northants, and that will be totaling to about 343,000 or just over residents. And 1 in the west consisting of Daventry, South Northants, and Northampton Borough consisting of just over 402,000 residents. As mentioned, all 8 councils are voting on the proposal, and so far 5 of those 8 councils has voted in support. Northampton Borough Council vote has been very tight on margin in terms of who was supporting and who was not willing to support it, so who was for and who was against it. But the remaining 3, Daventry, South Northants and Corby, whether it will be clean sweep in support for the submission of the letter across Northamptonshire or not, we are due to find out. I believe from the statements that were made by the remaining councils, they're a bit wary of supporting it, but still none have been sort of stating for sure that they will, reject the proposal or stop or try to maybe amend it somehow. But we yet to see. I know that Corby hasn't been so far in the most sort of overwhelming support for it. So it's been interesting to see how Corby votes. But I know the South Northants is intending to support. But again, I'm not going to prejudge. So we shall see on the night, see how the members vote, and I'm pretty sure councillors. It's a very difficult decision, especially for those who are dual hatters. When I represent Grange Park Ward at South Northampton Council and Towston Road Division at Northamptonshire County Council, I had to ensure that I use all my knowledge available to me and the skill and understanding of the matter. It's very complex, that I vote not just with my heart but also with my mind, thinking of what is going to be good or what is going to be best, bearing in mind the current circumstance that we are in with the County Council financial difficulties for my residents, the people I represent in the future years to come. Comes 2020, 2021, and if the unitary is heading our way, we have to ensure that we sit down all together with the government, all 8 principal councils, all representatives, and discuss the right way forward, setting up the solid plan, defining the objectives and a mission to work on to ensure that we deliver on the interests of our residents and represent our residents in the best way possible. Okay, but I have to be very clear. Even though the 3 councils are still remaining to vote on the proposal, because of the guidelines made by the Secretary of State, it required only 2 councils to vote in support, and more than 2 councils have shown their support for the proposal. The proposal will be submitted. The letter will be submitted to the Secretary of State, and there will be many more details coming out, subject to obviously Secretary of State accepting the submission, with in terms of what is going to be the next step, what kind of restructure is it going to be, who will be on the shadow board, what is the next deadline, or what is the next milestone, what are we trying to achieve as the next goal. Well, essentially all those details will be slowly emerging through the media and through the council reports, so keep an eye on it. I'll try to keep you updated as much as I can. And in my previous video I mentioned to you that there are so many for and against arguments of going into unitaries, and it's very, very true. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as promised, I'm going to talk about positives and negatives, so pros and cons of what is it like to go into unitary. I picked up the key areas of service delivery from not just the county council, but also districts and boroughs, which are important to daily life of the residents across Northamptonshire. Well, let's start with the less positives, or as I call them, negatives. It's obvious that with the local government restructure, just creating the 2 new unitaries, dismantling the county council, is not going to solve the problem. I believe the government has made it clear there will be no, money tree. There will be no just money given in lump sum, just to bail out the existing debt of the county council. So what does it mean? If nothing is going to be done, if there will be no change of services, no restructuring of the budget, and no laying out plans and ideas for the future, then the 2 new unitaries, West and North Northamptonshire unitary councils, are risking to start with a massive debt from day one, and essentially doomed for failure. So in order to avoid that, again, as I mentioned previously, principal council representatives are going to be meeting up with between themselves and the government, including chief executives and I'm pretty sure financial directors as well, to set up the right plan to move forward into the future under the new structure. There is currently a very significant imbalance between the revenue, income and expenditure at NCC, and this will have an impact on sustainability of service delivery, with the current position will be fully inherited in 2020-2021 by new councils. Funding the cost of transition, including redundancies from both the county council and all district and borough councils, redundancies of staff, will obviously be huge, okay? And the savings from these transitions will take some years to repay the costs, okay? The unitarisation does not solve the issues faced by the NCC, not at all. Services will need to be transformed at the same time. And again, the cost of such transformation will be seen in the long term, but not in the short term. So even though the initial calculation shows that we are aiming to have about 12 million plus savings, with potentially many more savings to come, essentially over 12 million pound in savings initially to be coming through the 2 new unitary structure, with many more savings to come. But the transitional costs will have to be repaid over a certain period of time, through these savings, because the savings are not going to be huge from day one. Then potentially, to be honest, the biggest issue the county council has got, that it might be, or the plan might deliver some disruption to the delivery of service of adult and children care, as well as the duty of the councils to protect the most vulnerable in our society. However, this is going to be tackled, and I know that there are currently weekly and fortnightly meetings of the relevant executives to ensure that there is a right way forward for the new authorities, and the negative impact will be mitigated to the best of the council's ability. Now let's talk about positives, and there are some very, very big and huge positives. Most of them would come in service delivery, so therefore we are aiming to see the quality of service for the customers or the residents to go up. The system will be simplified, the streamlining of the existing departments and existing services at the first-hand delivery to the residents will ensure that people will not be traded off between the organisation to organisation. You know, if you need something to be done, you're not sure who to contact, and then you think it's your local council, but then you're being told to go to speak to the county council because it's not your, district council matter or borough council matter. So all this will be simplified, streamlined, and hopefully this will be the way to make up savings because of the cut on administration burden, etc. So viability and affordability issues is yet another matter, with supporting infrastructure and comprising delivery of housing and employment. NCC has for some time unfortunately cut back on investment in infrastructure, and following the issues of Section 114 directions, some contracts have been lost. Okay, it will be vital for the continued contribution of both areas to the economy of this part of the Oxford to Cambridge corridor, that mechanisms are developed to facilitate that expansion or carry on facilitating. There is no plan to be isolated or hiding ourselves in the shell and cancelling the plans that have been developed by the districts and boroughs currently for the next 5 to 10 years. I'm talking about the growth deals, the growth deals which are currently being prepared in West and North Northamptonshire. And it will be all discussed with the government, and I'm sure that through that there will be a followed up willing government support. I'm only assuming, but I'm quite sure that if we show the commitment to the government that we can live within our own means and deliver the best service possible for our residents, then the government will be willing to tune in and help us with funding certain projects, and there'll be a great opportunity opened up. The proposal recognises that reorganisation could be an enabler of a different way of working in pursuit of outcomes. Essentially, it makes cross-disciplinary working easier, especially where the responsibility and expertise currently are being shared between different districts and boroughs, so it goes over the line, and again, it just creates administrative burden, and sometimes people get confused as to who's responsible for what. In driving growth in the economy and delivering the necessary infrastructure, housing and environment, having the 2 new unitary areas could offer more coherent geographic units to engage with the economic growth agenda and thus maximise the potential of the target housing and growth deals. Greater ability to join up infrastructure delivery with housing and commercial development, and also will enable the executive people in executive position make much more informative decisions based on the local needs on wider geographic area, rather than assuming or presuming what's needed where, and limiting themselves only to small geographical areas of districts and boroughs currently. Even though I have to say, and I very have to be honest with this, because I also sit on the South Northampton Council, that in Northamptonshire, districts and boroughs have done a cracking job. They have built up their reserves, they engaged in so many contracts and agreements, they have got a very stable plan for the future years to come, and most of their finances are quite good. They're strong, they're stable, they are growing, and but again, voting to go unitary is a massive historical step for Northamptonshire, and we have to embrace that new way of working, and this is, I think, is the way to move on to the future. And because the funding from the central government is reducing year on year, and essentially by, I think, within a decade they said there'll be zero funding coming from the government, and that would mean the councils will have to learn to live fully within their own means, generating incomes and improving their revenue budgets within themselves, rather than relying on the income from the outside bodies, the third parties, like the government, like it used to be before. And again, hopefully the unitary will lead to the effective use of resources. It could also allow more strategic coordination of community investments. A very tense week, very exciting. We're heading into the new future for Northamptonshire. I'll try to keep you updated on to what other changes might yet to come. There are another 3 councils are voting tonight. 5 already in support, 3 remaining, and only 2 were needed to move with the proposal. So essentially, I think we now head into the unitary councils. The setup of North and West, as explained, with 4 councillors joining up in the north and 3 councillors joining up in the west. And for South Northamptonshire residents, we will be part of the West Unitary of Northamptonshire Council. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it was rather informative, and if you have got any questions, by all means get in touch with me or find me on Facebook, Cllr Cllr Adil Adil Sadygov Sadygov, or on Twitter, or by all means just email me and I'll try to address your concerns in the best way I can. Thank you very much.